In the React Redux form lesson in the previous module, we had introduced you to the React Redux form package, and we saw how we can make use of the local form to create a React Redux form in our application. And then we saw that the state is mapped into the local state of the component. Now, if we want to make use of the full power of the React Redux form, whereby the form state is persisted in the Redux store instead of in the components state, then we need to update our form to make use of the regular form rather than the local form from the React Redux form. So in this exercise, we will go ahead and update our application in the contact component, the React Redux form that we introduced there, to enable us to make use of the full power of React Redux form. To help us to get started on this exercise, go to the Redux folder and then create a new file there named forms.js. And in this forms.js file, let's export a constant named initial feedback, which is as follows. We'll say first name is an empty string, last name is an empty string, tell num is an empty string, then email also an empty string, agree is false, contact type is tell, and message is an empty string there. Now, once we create these forms, then we go into the configure store and then configure our Redux to be able to store the forms. So this is where we take the help of the create forms from React Redux form. So the create form enables us to add this form state into our store. So how do we add that? So in here, the create forms will create a reducer that takes care of the form. So we go into the combined reducers that we define here, and then all that we need to do is say ... create forms, and then inside the create forms we supply feedback as initial feedback. So we will import the initial feedback from forms here. So as soon as I use the initial feedback, Visual Studio Code automatically imported that from forms. So once we import the initial feedback, and so if we initialize it like this, this will add in the necessary reducer functions and also the state information into my create store. So as you recall, I mentioned that the React Redux form brings in its own set of support for all these on our behalf. So we don't need to write our own reducers or our action creators and so on. React Redux form fills in all the details by itself. So once we do this, then in order to make it available to us, now the reason why we supply this initial feedback is that we can reset the form to its initial state after submitting the form. So in that case, recall that even if you reload your component, your form state will remain as such. So when you submit the form, you want to reset the form. So for that, I need to add in a new action. So going into the main component, in the main component, I will import actions from React Redux form. And once I import that, then I can add in one more dispatch here saying reset feedback form, which basically adds dispatch actions dot reset feedback. So the form will be named as feedback, and so this actions that we import from React Redux form adds in the necessary actions for resetting the form, which we will label as feedback. So the corresponding model will be called feedback. We'll update the form to that in a short while. And once we do that, then we go into the component. So because we are using this form in the contact component, so in the contact component, we are going to update this to say, now because we need to pass in an attribute to the contact component, so that's why I need to change this to saying contact and then reset feedback form equal to this reset feedback form. So that's how I need to update contact route here. So look at this route. We have updated it by turning that into an arrow function, which allows us to send this attribute as a property to the contact component here. Minor mistake in the main component. This should say this dot props dot reset feedback form rather than this dot reset feedback form. So once we complete this, let's go to the contact component. And in the contact component, we have imported control, local forms, and errors here. We are going to update this to say control form. We are no longer using the local form. We'll say control form errors. And then we'll also import actions from React Redux form. And then going down into the handle submit. Now here we did the console log and alert here. And then after this, we will say this props reset feedback form. Now going to the form itself. Now since we are not using the local form but instead using the form, I will update this to saying form, and then we'll say model is equal to feedback here. And then going down below here, we have to update this to also just say form. That's it. Let's save the changes and then go and take a look at the new behavior of our form in the contact component. Going to the application in the browser, let's move to the contact component. And in the contact component, you will see that the form exists as such. Let me type in some information in the form. And then midway through filling the form, I will navigate away to another component, a couple of other components, and then I'll come back to the contact component. And you will see that the form will still remain filled in from what I have filled in before. So even though I have moved away from this view and then came back to the view, since this form state is preserved in the Redux store, I'm able to see that the form state is preserved even though I navigated away from this view. Now let's go ahead and submit this form. And so when I submit the form, you can see that the information is reflected in the alert message as shown here. And when I click on the OK, you now see that the form state has been reset back to its empty state as before. So that's the reset feedback form function that we implemented, initiating the action to reset the form there. So that's the way the React Redux form helps us to manage forms on our behalf. Now, in order to convince you that the React Redux form is actually saving this information in the state of our Redux store, in the Redux store, let's pull up the log here. When you pull up the log, you can go through the log from the beginning to the end. So you see that you have a dishes loading that was done here. You have an add dishes that was done here. And then there are a bunch of RFF set errors that are, whatever you see as RRF is from React Redux form. So these actions are all done by the React Redux form on our behalf. And so in between, if you go to any particular state at any given point of time, you can see that this feedback state has been added in here. And this feedback state is tracking what we typed into the form here. So that's how we are keeping track of the form state. So one more here. So that's how we are keeping track of the form state in the Redux store. With this, we complete this exercise. In this exercise, we have seen how we can use React Redux form to store the form state in our Redux store and be able to persist the form state even when you navigate away from the view which contains the form and then come back again. And when you submit the form, you can reset the form to its initial value. This is a good time for you to do a git commit with the message React Redux form revisited.